Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm back in the shipping container that I converted. There's a video on the conversion in the description below if you've not seen that. But I'm going to be adding some shelving or timber racking to one side of it. So I've been using this container to store materials that I've made, so kitchen cabinets, doors, etc. If I've had it in the workshop and made it and I'm not going to fit it straight away, it's been stored in here in an acclimatized state. So I've got a couple of dehumidifiers in here, and it keeps everything nice, so when you go and fit it in someone's house, you've not got the problem of it then shrinking or expanding to suit their environment. So it's sort of acclimatised in here to a general sort of house humidity. So the purpose now, or what I found a use for, is to actually have my timber acclimatising before I use it. So I've had timber stacked in here for the kitchen that I've been working on, and it's worked really well. So what I've plan to do is have a timber rack all down one side of the container, so this entire wall. I'm going to add some racking frames too, and then perhaps, well, one end of it is going to have storage as well, so I can sit some kitchen cabinets and stuff up high out of the way and have a bit of nice storage there. Right, so these are the frames that I've had made. As you can see, they're a bit like a cantilever style racking, but without the cantilever foot. So I'm going to use the strength of the steel container to hold them upright against the wall, and have a little batten on the ceiling to stop the top falling in. So it's just a 50mm box section construction. It's 2.5mm box, and yeah, I've just had them 500mm sections welded onto the steel upright. If you're looking for a rough cost on these, it took him less than a day to weld them up, and we painted them in the same day. So you're looking at a day's labour for a fabricator, about 60 quid's worth of paint, and I think the steel was about 350 quid, somewhere around that mark. So yeah, probably all in total, you're looking at around 600 to 800 quid, depending on how much you pay someone to do and how much you do yourself. So that's the frames. I'm thinking if we get a couple in on the end, we can move some of the timber on the floor onto the rack to save moving it out of the actual container. Okay, so the moment of truth. Is it going to fit? Oh, look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. I'm just going to screw these into where the stud locations were within the wall. If that turns out to be not strong enough, I mean the design of the racking is so that I'm going to put a batten on the ceiling that will take the weight of the load, so that the load of it is transferred through that batten. If that's not enough, I can always drill through the container walls to the steel outside shell, and it will bolt it and hold it together that way. I can't see that being an issue, personally. So let's get a fixing in here. Got some 6mm screws. Thankfully, when I built the container, I made sure everything was nice and level, so I've not got to worry too much about the leveling these rails along the length of the racking, because the floor is nice and flat. Put one more screw in there. Beauty. I'm just going to work out the spacing for the frames. I've got 8 frames. The last one is going to end on this stud here. So it's going to be about 25mm off that centre. I'm just going to ping a measurement to the frame I've put up at the other end. So 7164. Let's write this down. 7164. I've got 6 frames spanning that gap, so we need to knock off 6 times the width of the frame. Okay, that's 50mm, so that's 300mm. So that's minus 300, 6864. And that's divided by 6 frames, there'll be 7 gaps. So 6864 divided by 7, it's 980. So just under a metre per frame. So I can work from that other end. If I just add 980 on and then mark a frame, we should be good. Notice these end frames are missing the top rung across here. So the end 4 of this end of the racking is going to have that bigger gap at the top, so I can store some cabinets on that top layer. Right, so before I get too carried away loading this thing up, I'm just going to put a couple of blocks screwed into the ceiling, because the ceiling board is supported through to the other side of the container, so it can't go anywhere. So I'm just going to screw these blocks to the ceiling board and sit them in front of the legs, so that any forward pressure on the legs has got to go through this block, so it's not going to go anywhere, as well as the fixings into the battens. Most of the weight on these legs is going to be transferring downhill. There is going to be a small forward pull, but that should more than take care of it, I think. So just grab a set of stools and screw them in place. So there's a rack. Right, just got a little bit of wood to bring in now. Now while we're here, we can have a quick look at the dehumidifiers. So I've just got a couple of household dehumidifiers in here, about 2.5 litre tanks on them. You can duct them into a little pipe, so it just constantly drains the water out and away. But I like to have them draining into the tank on the back of it. Let me show you here. If you spin this one around, it's clear. So you can see there's a tank at the bottom. We're about a quarter of the way full on this one already. So I'll just leave them going. I've got 2 different brands. It gives a bit of a comparison as to the moisture reading. One will read sort of when they turn off. They turn off at roughly the same time. And one will read 50% humidity, one will read 35. So you can say there's sort of inconsistency between 2 different machines. But that's sort of why I've set it around 50% humidity. And before I put all this new timber in, so before I bought the rack in, there's nothing new other than this timber that's gone into the container, and the dehumidifiers were actually only sucking out sort of about 1 litre a week, so they're pretty much at a constant humidity in here before I put this timber in. So there is about 3 cubic metres worth of tulip wood gone in, so it's going to be a good test to see how much moisture actually comes out of it. So this has come straight from James Latham, the timber suppliers. It's sold as kiln dried, around 15% moisture. So we're going to leave it in here with them machines going. I'll empty it out every day and keep a note of how much moisture I actually pull out before them machines settle down to a constant value like I had before I put the timber in, and we get a good idea of how much actual moisture in a volume is in the timber when it comes from the supplier to what state it ends up in when it goes into a house. There we have it. I accidentally turned the camera, well, I didn't accidentally turn the camera off. I turned the camera off and then forgot to turn it back on while we were loading that timber up. But I've just finished loading in 3 cubic metres of tulip wood. I've got some oak down here that I already had in stock. That's for a chopping board, butcher's block. Tulip that I already had in, some more American oak, and then we've got some bits of painted bits and pieces up here. So this section of the rack, now that you can see it, you'll see what I mean. I've left one of the rails out, so that top support bar I've left out, so I can put stuff like this extractor box that I've got built up down here, and built up things like these pull-out ladder units that I've got on the floor down here, and anything like that that gets built up, and I can just lift it up on this rack and store it out of the way. So I'll just put a board along the bottom there, and it gives me some decent storage away from the floor to keep things nice and safe. So that's what my plan for that was. Obviously I can store on the floor like I was doing before underneath on some bearers, and then we've got the tulip wood and the oak, English oak down this end, all stacked away nicely. So be a good test this. I don't think you'll get much more weight on it than we've got at the minute unless you use something like a heavy oak or a green timber, but it should be a good test for it to see if it's nice and safe. But I'm not too worried about it. It's not groaned or moved or anything, so it looks like it'll be fine. So that's the racking, and come in the morning with all my questions and stuff from YouTube about the container and go through a bit of an update on what we've done with that.